Hello everybody, I'm Alan Feldman.
And I'm Heather Bennett.
And we are from the Laguna Woods Democratic Club. And we want to thank you for taking your time to join us today. Today we have a guest, Henry Vandermeir, who is the Executive Director of the Democratic Party of Orange County. We're going to speak about the primary election coming up. The primary election coming up on June the 7th, just a couple of weeks away. So we're trying to get people to get out and vote and get registered to vote. That's what really this program is about. We're going to discuss the primary. So I guess we'll get right into it. I'll introduce Henry. Henry is, as I said, the chairman of the Democratic Party of Orange County. He is a longtime friend of the Laguna Woods Democratic Club. Henry was first, I believe, the president of the California Democratic Council. He's been executive director of the Democratic Party of Orange County, and he's been executive director of the Democratic Foundation of Orange County. So he's been working in Democratic Party politics for quite some time. He's a great friend of the Democratic Club of Laguna Woods. So Henry, I want to thank you very much and welcome you here to Laguna Woods Village.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and the road to get here and
So how did I get into politics?
Yes, that's a good question, yeah.
Yeah, so, well, I'm a military brat. Grew up in a military family, obviously going back and forth between Europe, which my dad was stationed a lot, and United States. Gave me a broad view of other views, other countries. And that's where I met my wife over in Europe, in Germany. We both went to the University of Maryland. Got our bachelor's degree, then we went to Boston University. We got our master's degree from there, after which we started teaching for the University of Maryland in the European division for a few years. After a few years of doing that, we had enough of that, came back to the United States and enjoying our life now in California for the past about 26 years, I think it is now. So that's as far as getting into politics. Took me a while. I wasn't one of these, I was typical, vote every 4 years kind of person. But it was during the Clinton time period when Republicans were really getting on the Clintons' case about almost everything that they were doing. And I could see where this was headed, and I said I better get involved. So I went to my very first Democratic Club meeting, or any kind of party meeting, and somehow came out of there as the vice chair of the club and haven't looked back since. So that's how I got involved, and it's been fun. It's been a fun time.
Okay,
Very good.
You've done a lot of work with the Democratic Party in Orange County. Obviously, you've had a lot of different positions there. What's the function of the Democratic Party of Orange County?
Well, it's very simple, actually. Our sole function basically is to elect Democrats within Orange County and register more Democrats. So it's a very simple job, but it's a very hard job on top of that, because we are in a, I want to say, Republican-dominated county here. Obviously, they have a lot more voters than we do, so it's a tough job to get more Democrats elected, but we are doing it. But our sole purview is local elections, and that is your city councils, water districts, those kind of elections there. We, contrary to belief, we do not either endorse or otherwise really get involved in the Senate races or the federal races. That's more of the state party's position. And although we will help them as much as we can at the local level, our main job is to focus on local elections and local candidates. And so that's what I want to make sure people understand, is that's what we are going to be working for, both in the primary as well as in the general election, is making sure we get more local Democrats elected.
Okay, makes sense.
What kind of assistance and aid do you give local candidates, like people running for congressional seats or state senates?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is one of the things that we have a little issue with a lot of candidates, because if you're running for Congress, then you're always going to be looking for the local party to help you out, but that's not our purview. I mean, that's why you have the DCCC. That's their job, is to support the congressional races. If you're running for state senate or state assembly, then you should be looking towards them for your support, not so much for us. us, because again, our job is local candidates. You have mechanisms to help those candidates out at the state level and at the state party level and at the federal level, whereas city council members and water district candidates, they don't have any mechanism other than us, and that's where we come into play. So as far as actually giving candidates money, no, we don't do that. We don't have that kind of money. I wish we could. But no, we don't do that. We mainly try to support them by doing more voter registration, getting out the vote, getting their name out there, and helping them in other ways that we can, that doesn't necessarily actually contribute to them.
That being said, what kind of drives are you doing to register people to vote? I mean, what?
Well, my main focus since I've been chair has been to make sure that the party is really involved in voter registration. For many, many years, the registration for Democrats has remained very stagnant, pretty much flat over the years. And I wanted to change that by making sure that the party itself was doing voter registration. And so we've invested over the last 3.5 years since I've been chair quite a bit of money in actual voter registration programs. We've either hired companies to do the voter registration or we've hired our own people. Currently we have a staff, a group of good team members that are going out doing get out the vote and voter registration in certain areas within central Orange County. And so that's kind of programs that we try to do, because for my opinion, that's the best way to help as many candidates as possible, by going in and making sure that people get out to vote for them, as making sure people register to vote for them, rather than giving a direct money contribution where I can't really control how that gets spent and stuff.
Right.
The party will actually endorse candidates. The Democratic Party of Orange County will endorse certain candidates. Could you just give us a little bit on how that happens and how people can find out where
Well, for the primary, for example, like I said earlier, our sole purview are local elections. So we cannot endorse as a local party for state senate, state assembly, or any of those kind of races, federal races. That's all left to the state party, and the presidential one, of course, is left to the national party on that. So our endorsement process will be after the primary, once we start getting to the general election pretty much. And that's where we have to wait. We have to wait until the filing closes, because you want to make sure everybody who's had a chance to file to run as a candidate gets to do so. And once that's done, that's when we will do our endorsements. We'll go over all the candidates that are running and stuff. As far as the primary, there are a few local races that we did endorse in. One of them is really important for us, and that's for the Orange County Board of Supervisors, District 1. We have a great candidate running in there, Michelle Martinez, and so we're hoping people will support her. And also real important for us is the Orange County Board of Education, District 1. We have Rebecca Gomez, who is running for that. And so we did endorse in those two races because they actually can be determined at the primary level. And so we can't wait until later on to do that. So this was important for us for those elections.
I think one of the things that people may have a misunderstanding about is that the Democratic Party of Orange County and Laguna Woods Democratic Club won't endorse a candidate simply because they're a Democrat. They endorse candidates who they feel follow the same belief system.
That's true. And unlike the opposition, who currently seems to be rallying behind their top nominee of Trump, regardless of what his stance is on various positions that we don't believe in, obviously. Democrats tend to be a little more picky. They will actually analyze and figure out what that person stands for, and if there is anything that they don't believe in that person, they are going to be a lot more questionable about that, and more, I would say, conservative about voting for that person. So we are pickier about that, which is kind of good in one respect, because we want to make sure we get the right person in. But then on the other hand, it also makes it tougher because you can't always get everybody behind a particular candidate, which makes it a little tougher.
Oh, yeah. Now, what about NPPs? We talked a little bit about that with the registrar voters.
Right.
So what do we...
Well, the no political preference, formerly known as, of course, those independents. They obviously come into real play in the primary for us because we are the only party that actually allows independents or NPPs, no political preference, to vote in our primary. Now, they do have to make sure if, number one, that you're registered as an independent. You cannot be, or an MPP, you cannot be a Republican and vote in our primary or any other party. You can only be a Democrat or an MPP. So you have to, of course, be one of those two. And then secondly, even if you are a no political party or no political preference, you have to actually request the Democratic ballot. So that's one of the key things people don't really understand about that, is that even though you can vote in our primary, you still have to make sure you request our ballot, the Democratic ballot.
Right.
Otherwise, they'll get a generic ballot and it won't have our candidates on there and think that
Right.
they can vote for.
So they can contact the registrar of voters.
Yeah, I would say the best thing to do is to contact the registrar of voters in Orange County and say that you would like to have a Democratic ballot sent to you. Now, most of the ballots have already been sent out at this point in time as far as the mail-in ballots go. If you still would like to vote in the Democratic primary, then the suggestion is you can either go to the registrar of voters, because they have early voting going on there too,
Right.
and ask them for a Democratic ballot, or you go to your polling location and turn in your current ballot that you have, which is going to be the generic one, and then ask for a Democratic ballot so that you can vote on that.
Right. And they can find their polling place on the back of their sample ballot.
It will be on the back of the sample ballot. You can also go to the registrar of voters and type in your address, and they'll give you that information there too. So there's a lot of opportunities to figure out where you need to go to vote.
And the registrar of voters website is OC Vote, right?
OCVote.com.
Yeah. I think that you can get if you want to trade in your generic mail-in ballot for a Democratic ballot, you can go to any polling station. You don't have to go to your own. Some people, because sometimes your polling station is 5 miles away while there's one right next door to you. So you can go right next door and get that. It's a
Yeah, you have to watch that a little bit though. I don't think it's so much of a problem in Laguna Woods, but in other areas you may be out of a district if you go to a different one, and so the people that you would typically be voting for in your district may not be on that ballot. So I would suggest that if at all possible, go to your assigned polling location to make sure you get the correct ballot, and that way you always have the right people to vote for.
I forget there's a world outside of Laguna Woods Village sometimes.
Well, and ours are mostly in our clubhouses.
Right.
In that area. So, after the primaries, how can people be involved and get involved with the DPOC or the Democratic Party of Orange County if they want to, and help get the Democrats?
Well, once the fun and games of the primary are done and over with, and we finally have settled on somebody that we're going to be endorsing for our presidential candidate, the goal will be, of course, to get as many voters out as possible for the November election. In Orange County, the Democratic Party is looking to get about 6 headquarters probably opened up across the county. And so we're going to need people to help volunteer for that. Obviously, we're going to need folks to staff those offices. We're going to need folks to do phone banking and, knocking on doors, all the typical campaign things. It should be easier because by that time we'll have the one candidate instead of right now, people kind of split between the two presidential candidates. So we didn't want to get involved in that fight. But once it's all taken care of and we've settled on that one person, it should be a lot easier to rally behind that person, and then we should be able to go out in full force. So they can always go to our website, which is the orangecountydemocrats.com, and there's a volunteer form on there that they can sign up for, and as well as other information, including our current endorsements for the primary. People can go to that too.
Okay, to find out the
to find out who we've endorsed at the local level.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the things that maybe people have a misconception about, which I think you're helping to change and clear up, is that I know I had the misconception. I've lived here for about 2 years, and before I moved here, I thought of Orange County. I thought it was just this total bastion, a monolithic right-wing Republican monolith. And when I moved here, I found out that that's not the case. And I think that the work that you've done has a lot to do with
Well,
that.
I do appreciate that, and this is one of the things reason I ran for chair was to try to make the change here. But things are changing in Orange County quite a bit, actually. You got to think in the early 90s, for example, the Republicans held something, I think, like about a 28 or something like that % advantage over the Democrats, and nowadays they're down to 7.6% difference between the two. The Republicans have been losing an average of 1.1% over the last decade in registration, and to be honest with you, Donald Trump has been probably our best marketing tool, because registration in Orange County has skyrocketed for Democrats. The registrations in the first 3 months have basically been a 2-to-1 ratio to Republicans, and we're seeing a very big change in this county. Irvine just recently flipped, which used to have a 48% Republican advantage, there, and now they're down to 32%, and we now have 33%. Garden Grove recently changed to become a Democratic city. So right now, the 3 largest cities in Orange County are Democratic registration, and 4 of the top 5 voting blocks in Orange County now have a Democratic advantage. And so we're seeing a big switch in the registration and the demographics in this county. I expect if things continue at their previous rate, that we'll probably see this county turn purple or blue even in about 6 to 8 years at most. And depending on what happens with this election, it could be sooner, depending on whether or not people really support Trump.
Now, do the NPPs play a huge part in that? Because I know that there's a lot of no party preference.
That's correct.
That have popped up in the last couple of years. And I know here in the village especially, looking at the numbers.
Right.
Not as many as registered Republicans or registered Democrats, but they're still have increased.
That's an interesting phenomenon, actually, because we just got the statistics that out of the 85 cities in California, 177 of them, the Republicans are behind both Democrats and the independents. So they're becoming a third party in this state. Democrats fall behind Republicans and the independents in, I think, about 8 cities they've calculated now. So we're seeing that trend switching, so that the independents are becoming more and more important as a voting bloc in this state. And so yes, people will be courting them, and again, nobody can really tell exactly what percentages are conservative or more progressive within that group. But as a rule of thumb, most people kind of go by whatever the demographics are in that district. You can pretty much expect that's what the demographics are going to be for the independents, the split that way too. You can't always say, oh, it's going to be half and half. That's not a good rule of thumb to go by there. But yes, people will be courting them, and especially when you think the independents are there because they believe a lot of times in a little of this party and a little of that party, you're going to try and court them as much as you can with obviously your values and things like that. So they will be a big voting bloc, important voting bloc this year.
I think one of the things you brought up, and I think it's really important, I think it's very reflective also. We're talking about the primary, voting in the Democratic primary, voting for president or in the Democratic primary. Democratic Party encourages people to vote. We want people to vote. We want people to vote Democratic. We offered them a ballot. You want to vote for the Democratic Party, you don't have to join. You just have to say you want to.
Right.
The Republican Party seems to not want people to vote in there. They want Republicans to vote in the Republican primary, and in states that they control throughout the nation, they seem to be trying to put up roadblocks in front of people to register to vote and to vote. So I wonder what you thought about that.
Yeah, obviously the Democratic Party has always been a very inclusive party, which is why we allow independents to vote on our ballot, for the primary, to have a say in our primary. And as well as getting people to actually vote itself. I mean, voter IDs, all these things are roadblocks to people getting a chance to vote. And, we don't think there should be any roadblocks. If you're an American citizen, you should be able to walk into your polling location and vote without any kind of a challenge whatsoever. But that is not the case in a lot of states across this nation, unfortunately. And it is an actual attempt to voter suppression. And voter suppression tends to be for more of the folks that typically can't get to voting polls, in a timely manner, may have to work. This is why early voting is real important, because not everybody can get out there on that Tuesday. It is a working day, and yeah, you can say that employers are supposed to allow you to get off for 2 hours to go vote. But when you're in a job position where there could be 20 or 30 people waiting behind you to take your job, are you really going to take that chance, of going out and being gone for 2 hours? So, it is kind of a constraint, and so early voting is an important piece of it. Voting by mail is very important. Gives you 30 days to go over it and get it in the mail at your leisure, and so definitely we want to make sure that people take advantage of that this year. And for the general election, we're going to be working with the Orange County Registrar of Voters to make sure that there are plenty of early voting locations across the county here to give everybody ample time to vote.
So Ben had talked about that when we talked to the Orange County Registrar of Voters, early voting, and also the village has a huge number of vote by mail. We have some poll voters, but most of them do vote by mail, so that's good news here.
I want to move right to the primary itself, just not the candidates, just the whole primary. The primary is confusing to people, especially the California primary, which is really more than one primary.
The top 2 primaries, they call it.
Right, there's a top 2, then there's a Democratic primary, Republican primary.
We still have problems getting the public educated on how important the primaries are now. It used to be that regardless of what party you were with, you were guaranteed to have a candidate to go through the general election, because the parties would decide who their nominee would be, and you didn't necessarily, as a regular voter out there, a Democrat or Republican, you didn't necessarily have to go and vote in the primary, because you knew there was going to be somebody there in the November election. Unfortunately, now the way that has changed with the top 2 primary, as they call it now, it's the top 2 vote getters. Those top 2 candidates that get the most votes are the ones that are going to be going through to the general election. So it may not necessarily be a party that you're with that gets through. So we encourage everybody now to go out and vote in the primary. Make sure that you have your candidate go through, because let's just say that Democrats don't show up for the primary, and we have, I don't know, let's say a congressional candidate who's trying to get through. If they don't show up to vote for that candidate, that person is not going to get through the top 2 primary in June, and then when the voter goes in November and doesn't see a Democrat on the ballot, they're going to ask and say, well, why isn't there a Democrat on here? And of course that comes back to us. Well, why didn't you guys get a candidate in there? Well, why didn't you show up to vote would be the question, So we do want to make sure that people understand now that it is important for voters to get out now during the primary, because it does make a difference. And it's not even just for the candidates for the general election, it's some of the down ticket candidates, because some of those races are being determined now in June. Judges, for example, if you're if you're really interested in judges, you should be voting for that. Like I said earlier, Orange County Board of Supervisors, the Education Board, all of these things are being decided at the June primary. And so if people don't show up and they don't get a candidate in, or whoever wins is not the person they were interested in, they should be there on June 7th and making sure they vote. It's really important. Your vote does now make a difference in the June primary compared to previous time frames.
That is one of the things that we try to emphasize here at Laguna Woods Democratic Club is vote. Don't stop at the top.
Exactly. Don't stop at the top, go all the way down the ticket.
In fact, my understanding is, and I might be wrong on this too, is that the races, there's judgeships that are being contested right now, more than one candidate for several seats. But those aren't really a primary election. Those are a real election.
Those are actual elections, And even the Board of Education is going to be determined in June. So there isn't this, well, it's going to go through to the actual general election. It's going to be determined at that point. So June 7th, get out to vote, folks, because we need you.
We need everybody who is eligible should get out to vote. And,
absolutely.
Without a doubt. And again, California makes it easy. So it's easy to register, it's easy to vote. You still have time to register for the state primary. If you want to participate in the June 7th primary, you have until May 23rd to register.
That's correct.
Correct,
So,
yeah.
you know, so don't hesitate, no excuses.
Right. And our voter guide, Laguna Woods puts out a voter guide, and will be available on our Facebook page, which is Laguna Woods Democratic Club. So you can visit us on our Facebook page for that. We're also distributing those throughout the village. We've got people in our club distributing those flyers and little packets, and it's also in the Globe. We did it last Thursday, and then it'll be published again on May 2nd for our poll voters. So we are really promoting the Democratic candidates.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
And we actually had it, I don't know if people were at our last meeting, but we had candidates come in. It's the last meeting before the primary, so we had various candidates come in and speak to the club. So it was really an interesting meeting, to say the least.
It was.
It was very good. Yeah. So
we're about done.
we are just about done. I mean, I think we've covered anything. Anything specific you want to speak about, Henry, that we haven't had a chance to cover?
Again, just encourage folks to help out with the Democratic Party. Keep in mind that the Democratic Party of Orange County does not get funds from the state or federal level. It's all just local donors.
Yeah.
And so please go to our website, again, orangecountydemocrats.com, and donate if possible. Help us out. Help us win these local races, and also volunteer. That's the key.
Great.
There's one thing I'd like to say, just before we finish, is
Sure.
just to remind people again how important it is to vote June 7th. Again, voting is easy here, and registering is easy. But you have to be registered to vote in order to vote. If you have not received in the mail a California State Voters Guide and a sample ballot from Orange County Registrar of Voters, chances are you are not registered to vote. And you still have until May 23rd to do that, to be eligible to vote in the June 7th primary. All you need to do is contact the Registrar of Voters, either by phone or using their website. If you use the website, you can look yourself up and see if you're registered to vote and see what party you're registered to vote in. If you do it on the phone, whoever is speaking with you, the staff there, they can look you up and they can tell you whether or not you're registered to vote. Again, you still have until May 23rd to do it. So if you're interested in voting in the primary, which we hope everybody is, please contact the Registrar of Voters office if you have any doubts as to whether or not you are a registered voter or not.
Well, Henry, thank you for your time. I think it was enlightening, and we appreciate it.
Well, thanks again for having me here. I definitely enjoyed it, and maybe we'll be back another day.
I hope so.
indeed.
All right, thank you.
Talking about the general election. Thank you very much.
good.
Sure, thank you.
Bye.